So when we get a couple of good recruiters and they actively try, they're like, I want to get involved in the group. It's like, all right, we had a whole, well, in the before times, we had a whole process. Like, you want to get involved, we don't ask a lot. Like, you commit the months, you come and buy the food, you get to do your spiel, hang out with us. And we would get these recruiters are like, yes, I totally want to get involved. And then we never hear again. Like we might get them for 1 month and then they drop off the face of the planet.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
Doesn't surprise me.
And that's like with all the companies. It's not just Vago, but Tech Systems.
Well,
we have another company, Apex Systems. Yeah.
It's like, I mean, it's hard, right? Because it's like, I think it's expectation setting on the front end, because I mean, as a recruiter, like you're told, hey, like come in, make a bunch of money, blah 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 blah, and then it's like, all right, well, you got to sit at a user group for a year, and you're like, wait a minute, what? And so it just, it just doesn't work, and thus you get people bailing and having this issue of most recruiters suck. So
yeah,
I get it.
The tactic I used to use was every time I met a recruiter, even if it was for the same company, I would try to build that relationship with that individual recruiter. So at like one point, I might have a relationship with 3 folks from Tech Systems.
Sure.
At any one point. And when I was looking for sponsors, I would email all 3 of them. I'm like, here's your chance.
Yeah.
Get in.
Absolutely.
If I get one of you to respond, that's awesome.
And probably the only one's going to respond because that's how we are.
Yeah. So we're live. Folks are slowly coming in. So we cross stream to Twitch, YouTube, and LinkedIn. So
how can I find you on LinkedIn? Or did you tag me? Yeah, never mind.
Yeah, I didn't tag you on LinkedIn, but I posted it. I literally don't do anything on LinkedIn. I hate LinkedIn.
You should, man. LinkedIn is great.
Hey, LinkedIn. I need someone to teach me.
Hey, you know what? If you listen to my talk, Kevin, that I'm about to present, I think you'll learn something.
Really? I'll learn something. All right, let's do it. You need to talk this at your popular talk would be how to avoid the LinkedIn spam.
Well, I can't. I can't do that. I mean, here's the deal, right? I mean, I get spam. Like, y'all should see my DMs.
Yeah.
Like, I got so many people trying to sell me their dang sales tool. I don't care. They're B2B, B2C, multiply clicks. I mean, y'all should see my DMs. I mean, my DMs probably just as bad as yours. But unfortunately, it's just the name of the game, which is one of the things I'm going to talk about in this chat. And for those of you who are tuning in now at this point, hello. If you do follow me on the interwebs, I said I was going on vacation, and you're probably like, Taylor, this is literally not vacation. You're literally presenting. So I would do it. So Kevin's my BFF, and I would do anything for Kevin. I would also do anything for Kevin when my calendar invite wasn't on my calendar, and that's probably my fault. And so I was beholden to speak. So here we are.
Here we are.
This is why I'm here. And I haven't bathed. I moved into a new house. For those of you who are tuning in, this is the first. Kevin and Drew get the very first live streaming from my home. So this is it. This is my new house. My wife did all the design. I did not. If it was up to me, there would be boxes everywhere, and I would have zero lighting, and it would look like I was in a cave.
Yeah.
But I'm not in a cave.
Hey, you want to give us the 50-cent tour? I see a chair.
Yeah.
I see a plant.
Chair. Yeah, chair. So basically, this is like, so if you come into our house, you like walk into the living room, and then you go around the corner, and like I'm the first room, and then there's like my daughter's room is right here next to me, and then our room's down at the very bottom. But we're going to basically blow down this house in the next 6 months and build a new one. So
there you go.
I mean, completely different.
Just save the chair. It's a nice chair.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh, no, this is a great chair. I need to finish composing this LinkedIn post to let people know that I'm not taking time off on vacation.
Yes. All right. So we got a couple folks out there in Twitch land. Hi, Twitch. glad you can be with us today.
Yeah.
A couple of folks in YouTube land. YouTube Live's not as popular as you want it to be. LinkedIn always gets a handful. So
Yeah. And then
especially if you're here, I mean, you're the LinkedIn king, right?
Listen, my job is to just post. I don't know if I'm necessarily king, but my job is just to try to add value as much as humanly possible every single day, Kevin. You know the drill.
And we can't live stream the Polywork yet, right? So
you can't, and I really need. So we're gonna go over Polywork. That's definitely one of the platforms I'm going to touch on tonight. I need to. So I had the founder CEO on my morning show a few weeks back, and I need to message him like, "Hey, you need to get streaming immediately because literally the platform we're going to go over it. It's not just for tech folks. Like there's actors, and I mean, there's a bunch of ecosystems on there.
yeah,
But like the main platform is for engineers, right? Like Peter has a bunch of developer advocates that he's like used to pimp out the product, and they're all developers. It's like you should have probably done streaming the first feature. But
yeah,
Peter, if you see this now in the future, figure that out.
So we're about to get started here, but we actually got a good question in chat about so as a recruiter, do you have any insight to hiring companies potentially asking for vaccination statuses of
it's definitely becoming a thing. It's something that we have to ask. I would also too, if you're working with a recruiter, I would definitely, if you feel comfortable, I would definitely just level set with the recruiter and let you know what you're comfortable with, what you're not comfortable with, because it's a lot of times, like what I've realized the longer I do this industry, a lot of times recruiters like are just bad because they don't even know how to ask questions, like the good questions, right?
Yeah.
So like for this, like if you just go ahead, like if you talk to me, S. Smith, tomorrow, or not tomorrow, don't call me tomorrow because I'm on vacation. So like when I get back in 2 weeks, like let's just go ahead and have the conversation about vaccination status like on the get go. Like let's just talk about it. Let's not hide it, because the last thing you want to do is get to the end of an offer and they're like, hey, are you vaccinated? Blah, blah, blah. And then it just like falls apart. So I would address that on the front end. But yes, you do have companies starting to require it.
Good times. All right. Well, we got a nice little crowd forming here, so you might as well kick this this puppy off. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the monthly Hampton Roads.news group. I'm Kevin Griffin. I'm joined by my cohort, Drew. Drew, how are you tonight?
Doing well.
Drew's coming from a blue background. Drew, have you built anything useful recently?
No.
I know you're working on, what was your last project you were working on? The clock?
Yeah, the clock. And I'll say the clock's great. It changed perfectly for daylight savings, which I can't say so much for the other half of the clocks in my house.
Fantastic. So, next time you need to come prepare a demo of the clock for us, because I like to see that. Because I think it was in progress the last time we chatted about it.
Yep.
Well, good times. So, folks, we have Taylor with us. And let me. I have to describe my first in-person interaction with Taylor. Was at KCDC, Kansas City Developer Conference, a couple months ago.
Shout out
fantastic in-person conference.
That was great, by the way. That was great.
Yeah,
it was a good time.
We had so much fun, and I don't remember. Was it the dinner? It wasn't the dinner. It was before the dinner. Was it speaker dinner?
The speaker dinner.
It's probably speaker dinner.
Yeah.
I'm walking in, and when you walk into these speaker dinners, especially like KCDC, it's like 100 something people in there.
There's a lot of people.
It's usually like 50% people I know like really well, and then there's a 30% like people I kind of know in passing, and then there's other 20% of people I just don't know at all.
Right. And everybody's introvert to these things, so you're not going to talk to those 20% anyways.
Yeah. So I remember I forgot who I was talking to. I turned the corner. All of a sudden, it's like, hi, my name's Kevin. And you're like, I'm your biggest fan. Taylor runs up, gives me a hug. And it's like, all right, it's the best reception I've ever had.
Yeah.
I will never forget that for as long as I live. So
I love it.
And so I'm sitting there at a disadvantage because I don't know who the heck Taylor is.
Most people don't.
But
Fine.
all right, so let's get down and Chen, come and find out Taylor is a recruiter, and he'll talk about all of his background and stuff, I guess. But you don't see recruiters commonly at developer conferences talking about like job hunting skills and stuff like that. So it was really refreshing to see a recruiter like Taylor actually talking about this stuff and trying to get to know people. So like those of us out here who have had relationships with recruiters in the past, good and bad, like Taylor is the 1%, like the type of recruiter you hope that you get, based out of Nashville, Tennessee. So you want a good job, go to Nashville, Tennessee, hook up with Taylor. But so Taylor was supposed to be here last month and he bailed on me.
Why did I bail? I forgot. I don't know.
It's all right. It's all right. It happens. But he's with us this month and he's going to talk to us about social media and using that as a tool for finding your next job if you're in the market. Our chat is open on all of our different platforms. So if you have questions, drop them in there. And whenever Taylor starts taking questions, we'll pop them on the screen and we'll have a discussion. But Taylor, everything's yours. If you want to, are you sharing slides, anything like that? Or
Yeah. So I'll share my screen. I'll share my screen here in a minute. So thanks again for everyone tuning in this evening. I appreciate it. Sorry I messed with my hat. I feel like there's like a shadow on my hat and it feels crooked and it's driving me absolutely. But I'm not gonna take my hat off because I've been moving all day. And so basically a little bit about me. I'm in Nashville, Tennessee. If everyone's coming through Music City, please hit me up. Let's hang. I've been recruiting for 10 years, which is not normal. Most people bail in about 2 years. It's like Kevin and Drew and I were talking off air before we went live. People don't know recruiters are overpromised. They don't realize it's a long game. There's not an emphasis on relationships, and thus they burn out. And so for me, I was always in it from the get-go for the people. I'll tell this. I don't tell a story that often, but I was new at Vaco, and we were at one of our like national regional events that we do, and I was in this breakout session, and they're like, why are you here, right? Or list the 3 reasons why you want to do this job. And I was like, all right, well, people, relationships, money. And literally everyone went around the room. They're like, money, money, money. I mean, everybody went around the room, money. And I was like, wait, am I doing this wrong? And so, but after looking at it, most of those people who put money aren't here anymore, right? And that's the biggest differentiator. Is that it's always people and relationships first. And that's what I'm passionate about. And so today, what I'm going to talk about over the next 6 hours. So we're going to be at this until midnight. So hopefully y'all ready.
Let's go.
I'm just kidding. Probably in the next hour, 45 minutes, because I got to finish unpacking boxes. And I need to shower. I haven't bathed. And so today I'm going to talk about networking. And so the reason why I'm talking about networking and how to leverage social media is because I've become fascinated with when COVID hit last 2 years, March of 2020, time's relative at this point. When COVID hit in March of 2020, I talked to a bunch of people who were scared. And I've really started to take a listen to what they were saying. And one of the things that they were consistently scared about was they didn't know what was next. They didn't know, you had people who are comfortable at their jobs who had no network, right? And so I became fascinated with how do you build community online? And what's crazier is I've realized that building community online is as simple as actually leveraging the tools you have, like social media, day in, day out. And so what this session is over the next little bit is I'm going to break down LinkedIn, Twitter, and Polywork. Obviously, there's nuances. I could probably give an hour just on Link or 2 hours just on LinkedIn. I can give an hour on Polywork probably and an hour on Twitter. And so we don't have that type of time. So I'm going to fly through the high points on all 3 platforms. I'm really big on TikTok. No, I don't dance. You'll never catch me dancing. However, yeah, there you go, Kevin, bob that head. But for me, I think you could leverage TikTok as a job seeker, right? And so really one of the things I love about speaking live is the Q&A. So if you have questions, please ask them. Kevin will throw it up on the screen. But by the end of this session, I really want you to be like, man, like maybe I should download LinkedIn on my phone, right? Or maybe I should, if you're Kevin, maybe I should finally start using LinkedIn, right? And so my goal is for y'all to be very comfortable with doing this moving forward. And so let's go ahead and dive in. I want to go ahead and start off on LinkedIn. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen real quick. So here we are, right? So we're going to share my screen. There we go. Cool. So as you can see, Taylor Desseyn is on vacation, but I'm here. That's what you do for your best friends. And so for me, when it comes to LinkedIn, I'm gonna kind of buzz through this real fast. So first off, the title, the cover banner photo thing. I don't really know the professional term for this, but to be honest with you, this is incredibly important. The reason why it's incredibly important is because the normal human eye, if you have a little bit of undiagnosed dyslexia like me, sometimes you don't read left to right, top to bottom. But for the most part, we all read top to bottom, left to right. The banner photo is incredibly important because it really pulls people into your profile, right? There's a lot that comes into play with a job search with marketing. I'm not going to get into that now, but all I'm going to tell you is this. Really make sure your banner photo pops. Now, you're probably like, Taylor, this is great. How did you do this? Well, I use Canva, C-A-N-V-A. It's like Design for Dummies. If I can figure it out, you can figure it out because I am very bad with the computer. And so for me, the biggest thing that I would put on, one of the biggest questions I get is like, Taylor, all right, this is great. Banner photo, yada, yada, whatever. What do I put? The biggest thing that I would put is your email or a way or your GitHub or your portfolio link or something where people can, where you want to really drive attention to, because LinkedIn makes it hard to find your email, right? If you're in LinkedIn, you have to go to contact information. And for the most part, people don't even have their contact information updated. And so what I would do is I'd really put it up here. I have my website that you can go to, but at the end of the day, it's really, really important to have your email address at least at a bare minimum. And again, to all those people out there who have like a picture of a mountain range or like a picture of a babbling brook or like a picture of like a valley, none of that's going to help you find a job, right? Literally, this is a way for you to captivate your attention. Now, you're probably like, Taylor, that's great. Follow for hiring, advice for both the company and candidate that works. Like, I get that, Taylor. That makes sense for what you do. But like, what about me? Right. Well, I'm going to go to a buddy of mine, Dan Thompson. So Dan Thompson and I are on a podcast together called Unicorn Finders. You can check that out. So Dan, I love Dan's, right? So Dan's is very simple. He did his in Canva as well. Again, normal human eye, top to bottom, left to right. So the left-hand side is incredibly important because that's where most people are going to focus. He puts his email address and his Twitter handle. Those are the two mediums that Dan uses, being his friend, uses a ton, right? Don't send Dan a Slack message. He'll never check it. That's a whole nother issue in and of itself. So, and then the Tampa skyline, and a little bit about Dan, right? Dan's an advocate, relationship builder, connector, wine guy, right? A little bit about Dan. I think for me, when it comes to your professional and personal life, there's a huge blend now because of COVID, right? We're all in our homes, right? You guys are literally, anybody who's watching right now can literally see inside my brand new house, right? Us living through COVID and us working virtually, like there is such a blend of professional and personal now. And so really let that come through on your LinkedIn profile. So headshots, incredibly important. Listen, if there's anything that I would pay to get done in your job search, now people argue with me, but at the end of the day, they're not speaking at this and I am. So here we are. Is pay for a professional headshot. A professional headshot goes a really long way. I'm going to tell a story. I don't see Kevin on here. Kevin, I don't know where you went, but one of the reasons I fell in love with Kevin before I even met him, there he is. Kevin, one of the reasons why I fell in love with you before I even met you is because of your profile picture on your Twitter. It is very happy. It literally, Kevin looks like the nicest human being ever. Like his, and I literally, I'm not saying this because Kevin invited me. I'm saying this because I felt comfortable approaching Kevin in person because of how personal his profile pic is. So imagine if you're interviewing for a company and like their first impression of you is your profile picture. right? To where, man, Kevin seems happy and energetic. Like this is going to be a blast. Like literally, I had the confidence that I could say, Kevin, never met Kevin before. Give him a bear hug and know that it was going to be okay because of his profile picture. Kevin, thank you so much. You can go ahead and like turn off the camera again or whatever you're doing. But again, incredibly important to have your banner, your profile picture very well done. I'm going to go on to the featured section. So the featured section is incredibly important. So there's three main parts of a LinkedIn profile that I'm going to go over now, or I'm going to go over here and emphasize the most. One is your banner photo, right, that we just went over. Two is the featured section. Obviously, headshot's important, but the featured section is incredibly important. So the featured section, the reason why it's so important is because this is the only place on LinkedIn where you can hyperlink something, and so somebody can go to something outside of LinkedIn, right? You can't hyperlink your banner photo. Even if you put like taylordesseyn.com like I did, like you still can't, you can't click on the banner photo and it goes somewhere. And so it's incredibly important for the featured section because of the fact that people will have the ability to go and check out who you are, right? For me, if you're in the software engineering space, GitHub, portfolio link. Here's the one no-no that I say constantly is do not include your resume. And here's the reason why. The reason why is because, and we're going to get into this on LinkedIn here in a second, is because you want to develop a conversation in the DMs, right? So what will happen is if you include your resume, let's say I come across Kevin, let's say I come across Kevin's profile and Kevin has his resume in the featured section. All I got to do is click on the resume, see if it works, and then move on. If Kevin did not have the resume in the featured section, I would DM Kevin. Hey, Kevin, came across your profile. You look really good for this role I have. Can you send me your resume? I want to deep dive with you a little bit more. Kevin goes, sure, great. Here it is. After reviewing it, and Kevin may not be a fit, and that's okay. So I'll message Kevin back and Kevin, hey, listen, man, like, thanks again for messaging me your resume. You're not quite a fit for this role, but let's stay in touch. Here's why it's so important is because that unique interaction in the DMs allows you to build a relationship moving forward. And this is what we're going to get into here over the next 40 minutes, is that Kevin is always a fit. I love it. And so that's why it's incredibly important because now Kevin has the DM relationship with me to where let's say Kevin stays in touch with me and sees a job that I post on my portfolio or on my LinkedIn. Kevin then has the DM, the already existing DM to where he can message me like, hey, Taylor, you saw where we chatted really briefly about this one role. I saw where you have this role posted. I'd love to talk with you about it. Right. So that's why it's incredibly important to not have your resume on your feature section. I also want to go up. So the feature section is like the second most important section. The title section is the most important, right? So if y'all get anything, like if you have to bounce to go feed the kids or walk the dog or go cook or something, here's the one thing you need to know, and then you can log off after this, but don't log off. But if you need to, is the title portion. So the title portion is incredibly important because this is like the cliff notes. This is the TLDR. This is what allows recruiters. This is what recruiters focus on to message you, right? So I'm going to run through an exercise real fast with y'all who are watching on why this is so important, right? So I'm going to type in the word .NET developer, right? So and again, I'd get really comfortable if I were y'all. Getting comfortable in the search feature within LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is so important. Like, I'm going to put this in perspective. LinkedIn is the only platform where you can search and DM any hiring manager at your favorite company in the world and potentially start a conversation immediately, right? Guys like Kevin who are freelancers, like Kevin, this is why it baffles me you don't use LinkedIn. Like, literally, you can go through your contacts, cold DM somebody, and potentially go get business because you're developing. Like, LinkedIn is like where it all happens. Yes, there's a lot of spam. I'm not going to deny that, but LinkedIn is the only platform right now. Polywork's coming. We'll get to that in a second, where you can DM any hiring manager, any person at any company you ever wanted to work for and strike a conversation immediately. Here's why the title portion is so important, right? So when I search .NET developer in the Nashville area, there are 500 people that pop up. This number changes every day. I don't know what's going on with the search feature, but I don't have time as a recruiter to sift through 500 applicants, right? So what I look for is I look at the title, right? .NET developer at RevSpring, right? .NET developer at OnLife Health, right? senior .NET developer, right? These are things that make me click on your profile, right? So I pick on Stephen Griffin all the time, and I really hope I can meet Stephen Griffin one day because I literally pick on this dude, this poor dude, every single time. So EFC Systems, they are a .NET shop in Nashville, but Kevin, you don't know that, right? So let's say Kevin was a recruiter, and I don't have time to sift through 500 applicants. More times than not, I'm probably not clicking on Steven's profile because he doesn't have it in the title. Now, you're probably thinking, Taylor, this is ridiculous. That is a lazy take. I understand that. There is a reason why recruiters have such a bad reputation. This is one of them. We don't take time to read and really look into things. This conversation and this talk today is essentially a marketing SEO talk for your job search, right? Everything I'm telling you is through the lens of a recruiter. And so I'm trying to optimize your profile for the job search, right? And so that's why the title portion is so important. Moving on, because we have a lot to cover, and I realize that we are a little strapped for time. So the about section, listen, you're not going to make or break the job search on the about section. It is what it is. And then the experience section, listen, there are a bunch of different thought processes around writing a resume versus a LinkedIn. In my opinion, your LinkedIn should be a summary of your resume. There are other people who say your LinkedIn should be, your LinkedIn should be a longer form of your resume. Listen, it just varies, right? It just varies. It is what it is. In my opinion, when I look at resumes, and again, my background is I focus on engineering recruiting. So I ran the numbers the other day. I've met close to 5,000 engineers at this point in my career. I'm just telling you what I look at from an engineering mindset, right? So when I go to your LinkedIn, I want to know what tools, what tech you used, and maybe a main project or two that you worked on, right? So how I would break down your profile is, one, tell me what you do, like you're describing it to somebody in your family. Because let's face it, we all talk to people in our family differently than we do somebody in our industry. And so that's your first bullet point. Hey, listen, I developed the red dot on the home screen on LinkedIn, right? That's very simple. My mom would understand that. Your second and third bullet point is going to be highlighting your main tech you use to solve X problem, right? So leveraged X technology to solve Y problem, Y technology to solve Z problem, et cetera, and then a recap of your entire tech stack from front to back. Moving on. So recommendations are incredibly important. The reason why recommendations are so important is because it really separates your profile out, right? So for example, I'm just saying it flat out, if I went to your profile and you had 5 recommendations or 0 recommendations, and you went to my profile with 28 recommendations, like who do you think you're probably going to like DM first? Same skill set, probably me, right? And I do the same thing. I catch myself doing the same thing with everybody, right? If I have 2 developers I'm kind of choosing to message, yes, recruiters should message both. Do we? Not all the time. Who am I going to go with? Probably the one where they have people speaking for them more than the other, right? So listen, that is a quick down and dirty. Like I said, I've given a LinkedIn masterclass for over an hour. We don't have that type of time. So that's how you build your LinkedIn profile. So let's talk about actually leveraging LinkedIn to find a job, right? So here's why LinkedIn is so important. Right. So let's see here. I'm trying to show you why LinkedIn. So there's 3 ways to use social media to find your dream job. One is actually posting content. Now, content is a whole nother conversation in and of itself. My big thing with content is just post once a day about something you're learning, right? A lot of people are like, well, I don't want my employer to know I'm looking, right? Listen, if you literally just post what you're learning, that's not a bad thing. You're just documenting, right? And so posting is the first way to use any social media, posting content. The second one is liking and commenting on people's posts, right? So we're going to get to that here in a second. I'm trying to find a good example right here. Let's see here. And then the third, okay, so here's this. And then the third way to use social media is to actually DM people, right? The DM game is really strong on Polywork. So I'm gonna broach that here soon. But so here's the reason why it's so important to like and comment, right? So if you're probably thinking, Taylor, listen, I ain't got time to do content. You talk about it all the time. I ain't got time. Listen, I get it. Content's not for everybody. I totally understand. But when it comes down to it, the next thing you can do that's incredibly important is liking and commenting and being thoughtful in the comments on other people's profiles. Here's how, right? And here's why it's so important. So LinkedIn actually encourages you to comment and encourages you to like stuff. And here's why, right? So Christian Bordeaux, I know Christian, he and I met over Clubhouse. Christian's at PlayStation as an analytics engineer. So I don't know Darren Bell, right? I don't know who this Darren Bell person is. And you can tell by that because the second connection means Darren and I have one person in common, or at least somebody in common. Obviously it's Christian. So Christian commented on this, right? So when you comment on a profile on LinkedIn, whose name, just whose name, not real estate on the screen, whose name do you see more? Darren or Christian's? Christian's. Why? Christian up here, Christian down here. You see Darren's post once, right? So again, if we're reverse engineering how this works with the job search is about timing and top of mind, right? With me in my career meeting 5,000 engineers, it's all about top of mind, right? Kevin reached out to me to speak tonight, right? If I have a project that Kevin could be a fit for, who do you think I'm calling first? It's Kevin, because Kevin's top of mind, right? The job search is all about timing too. There are so many people who are great fits who just didn't get it this time, but then sometimes a hiring manager calls that same person 30 days later and they get the job, right? It's literally timing and top of mind. And so if you are constantly commenting and liking this, if you're constantly commenting and liking on people's posts that you want to engage with, it'll make you become a brand name, and you'll become recognizable, right? And so again, with Christian here, if Christian continues to comment on Darren's profile, Darren will eventually know who Christian is just by literally Christian commenting and liking. Like for me, I have a live show every morning, 9:30 a.m. Central, not for the next 2 weeks because I'm off. But the thing is like, there are so many people I've met on my live show, and all they do is comment and like every single day on my stuff. And I've become friends with them, right? Because it's natural as human beings. If you like and you comment and you engage enough with people on the internet, they will start to engage with you back. The final thing is the DM game, right? So I want to talk about the DM game for a second. I'm going to go and stop sharing my screen for a second. There's three ways to do a good DM, and here's why it's so important for the DM side of things, right? Most of y'all are terrible at DMs, right? I was bad at DMs. I'm very fortunate my wife said yes on Tinder to my weird DM, so here we are. But most of y'all are terrible at DMs. So here's my hack on how to develop a good DM. First off is admiration and flattery, right? So, hey, Taylor, hey, Kevin, I saw where you put on the live thing yesterday. I love what you're doing. Would love to be a part of what you do, right? So that's admiration, flattery, right? You mentioned you made a comment that you saw what Kevin was doing yesterday, right? It means you take notice. The second thing is a specific amount of time and a specific question, right? So where people really mess up in the DM game is, hey, Kevin, would love to chat with you. And that's it. Kevin ain't got that type of time. I can tell you right now, Kevin's a popular man. He ain't got that type of time, right? And so for me, if I message Kevin like, hey, Kevin, listen, saw your event you put on yesterday with Taylor. It was great. Would love to chat with you for like 6 minutes on how you develop community virtually through StreamYard, right? So what does that do for Kevin? That literally does. Kevin knows what he's stepping into. He knows it's going to be a short conversation because, again, 5 minutes, ain't no one got time for 5 minutes, right? My mom goes, hey, Taylor, you got 5 minutes? We all know what that means. That's an hour conversation minimum. Ain't no one got that type of time for that. And so for me, what you really need to do is you really need to make sure you are specific with time. Don't do even numbers. I like odds. Odds sound better. 3 minutes, 7 minutes, 9 minutes. Don't do 10 minutes, right? Everyone says 10 minutes, right? So again, admiration, flattery, a specific amount of time, a specific question, because individuals want to know what they're walking into, right? That's the DM game. So again, 3 ways to leverage LinkedIn. Number 1, and really any social media platform. 1, actually post content, right? Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube, you name it, post content. Video goes a long way right now, right? If I were you, if we're going to go back to LinkedIn for a second, the featured section like I talked about, I would do a selfie style video, right? Because let's face it, all first round interviews are the same. Hey, Kevin, tell me about yourself, right? S. Smith, tell me about yourself, right? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses, right? What are you doing right now? What are you proud of, right? It's the same thing. So why don't you just do a video interview and throw it on your LinkedIn page as like a video cover letter? So if I come to your profile, I can actually learn about you and fall in love with you, not in a weird way, right? When I say fall in love with you, whether you like it or not, we are going to be living in a more virtual world from here on out. Not to mention what Facebook and Meta and the metaverse and NFTs and all that jazz, right? Like literally, we're heading there, whether you like it or not. I was having a conversation with a friend the other day. He goes, "Well, I'm not going to be in the metaverse," and I was like, "Well, you may not have a choice, right?" And so, get used to networking virtually online, and by doing that, video goes a long way, right? And I think you don't have to be comfortable in video. You can literally just selfie style it up and do a ton of different takes on it, but post it on the feature section on your LinkedIn or other job sites that you use. So if I check you out for a job and I watch your video, like I know your personality, I know who you are, and it's an easier conversation. And also too, if you're going to do a video, you can and that person goes, "Hey, I saw your video. I love you." You're like, "Oh, wow, this person," again, admiration, right? They took time out to watch what I'm doing. So it's incredibly important. All right. We just flew through LinkedIn and kind of general networking strategy. For the next 20 minutes, I want to go over Polywork and Twitter real fast, right? So let me pull up Twitter real fast. Let's see here. All right, so I'm going to share my screen again. And y'all, if you have any questions, please throw it up. Okay, how do you transfer over to work in a new programming language? So freelance, Word. Thanks for the question. How do you transfer over to work in a new programming language? So for me, what I would do, and again, this is just me, I would really try to work on stuff on your own. Ideally, if you have the time, volunteer it. Now, again, Lord have mercy. This is a whole nother conversation in and of itself. If you are if you are a Ruby developer and you want to go into .NET development, right? What I would do is I would go around asking small businesses, nonprofits, churches, say, "Hey, listen, do you need any apps written? I would love to help," and write it in .NET. And here's what I'm saying. I placed I placed a .NET guy developer. The company he was interviewing for was very heavy Azure, very, very heavy Azure, like serverless, all that jazz. I don't know what these terms mean, but that's what they were wanting. And so literally this guy did not have the experience in an 8 to 5 world, but he was volunteering his time like 5 hours a week to develop a site for, I forgot what the organization was. And it was all in Azure. I mean, the whole thing, it was Azure, serverless, everything, right? He got the interview. He didn't get this job. He actually didn't get this job. He got the other job I placed him at. But he got the interview though, because of this side project was so impressive and all the tech he used, right? So that's what I would do. Now, if you're still a freelance Word, if you're watching this, like, I don't like that answer. My other answer is you got to work on something on your own, have it in GitHub, have it somewhere, have the code living somewhere, and being able to link to it during an interview. That's the only other thing I would say. So, all right, I'm going to go to Twitter. I'm going to hit the high points on Twitter. Twitter, and the best analogy for me that I say with Twitter is Twitter's like a babbling brook, right? So if you tweet something, like, it'll it'll be there for like a bit, but then it'll get washed away, right? So from a content creation perspective, you kind of got to live on Twitter. So if you're like, well, I definitely I don't have time for that. Listen, I get it because I do it full time. That's basically my job now as a content creator amongst 3 or 4 other jobs I have. If you don't want to do the babbling brook amount of content, I tweet about 20 to 25 times a day. Like if you're sitting at home, you're watching, it's like, how many times do you tweet a day, Taylor? 20 to 25, not to mention all the replies and stuff. Again, another conversation in and of itself. I'm going to show you kind of some bare bones stuff to do with Twitter, right? So I'm going to go back, share my screen. If you have any questions, please throw it up. Freelance Word. Thank you for asking that question. Hey, Kevin, can you throw the there it is. Thanks, buddy. All right. So a few high points again, as always. So the banner photo, same thing like LinkedIn, right? Same thing. It tells you about yourself. It's got my website, right? It lures you in, right? Again, headshot, incredibly important. This is the equivalent to your title portion on your LinkedIn. This is so important because people need to know what they're getting into when they follow you, right? If you just say like recruiter, dad of 3, dog lover, like that, I mean, that's great, but it doesn't tell me what you tweet about, right? People want to know what you tweet about. And so for me, it tells me what I do and what I tweet about, right? So that's incredibly important to add. Also too, that you have a link to something that you can do. For me, this needs to be, I don't know, your website, something, right? This takes me to like a link tree type situation where you can find out more about me and kind of who I am. But you also can pin your tweet as well. So pinning tweets is great. You only have one. But this is kind of what your cover. I would do this video. If I were you and you heavily rely on Twitter, I would absolutely use this as your video cover letter because Twitter is a wall of text. And in my opinion, the reason what's really helped me stand out on Twitter is the use of video because no one's really leveraging video on Twitter. Twitter is a written platform. And so if you really want to make waves on the job search, leverage video. I also want to bring to your attention lists. So so I just updated my Twitter and I don't see it. Let's go to, here it is, lists. So lists are incredibly important because lists are derived based off your followers and who you follow, right? So for me, I would follow Taylor's Tech, right? So if I was live, if I was live this on my account, I would share it, but I can't. So basically, if you go to my profile, go to Taylor's Tech, follow it. It's got 75 of my favorite followers. Actually, no, 97. Sorry, 75 people follow this. 97 of my kind of favorite tech people that I do, that I follow, that I really appreciate. And what you can do is if you follow this list, you'll immediately start getting fed content from these individuals. And the reason why lists are such an underrated thing on Twitter is because a lot of people don't know where to start on Twitter, right? They don't know who to follow. They don't really know. It's just a sea of people. So what I would do is I would go to list immediately and I would start engaging with people, right? Like, for example, there's some of my list, KCDC, right? Kevin and I are on that list together. But, for this, like I'm assuming this is TypeScript conference. There's 24 members on this. Like you can literally just go and you can network with Mike or John or all these people, right? And you can continue to like and comment on their posts and it'll be great. And you'll start developing a following because of that. Twitter is all about liking and commenting and really engaging. So that's how I would use it. So that's Twitter down and dirty, right? Do you need Twitter, right? We're about to go to Polywork. I get the biggest question I get is like, Taylor, where do I start? You start on LinkedIn. Like literally I would start on LinkedIn. If you're like, Taylor, this is kind of cool. Like I kind of want to get into more of this, maybe venture into Twitter, maybe, but know that Twitter to use it really, really well is you got to be on it a lot. You got to be on it a lot. All right. So moving on to Polywork. So Polywork is the last platform I'm going to touch on the last 15 minutes. I'm also going to open this to questions and then also a wrap up with Kevin and Drew at the end. And so, yeah, so I want to go ahead and dive into Polywork. Let's see here. Where is it? Here it is. All right, cool. So Polywork. It's like LinkedIn, but a little bit better, but also not as good as building community. So hear me out. The reason why I would use Polywork is the DM game. So let's talk about Polywork. Let's talk about Polywork at a super high level, right? I interview the founder CEO on my live show, Guidance Counselor 2.0, every morning. And they created Polywork to get out of the resume and to get out of the LinkedIn. So what they're really big on Polywork is highlights, right? So what you can do is you can post highlights, big things that you accomplished, right? So for me, I post a lot of my live show and who I interview, and also some big interviews, because I literally just interview all the time, right? That's kind of my job. And so, for this one, like you can go watch it. Like this is a session I did with a developer community over in England, right? And so you can go check that out. But for me, I'm going to break down the nuances of Polywork and why it's so cool. So first off, when you build out your Polywork, you can use something called badges. And so badges are important because it kind of labels you, and you can start kind of building out your network because of it, right? So for example, I am interested. So badges mean like what you're interested in, right? So hiring, software engineering. I'm interested in being a mentor to somebody, an advisor, a speaker. I'm passionate about open source, DevOps, coding, and I'm a corgi lover. Big corgi fan. My corgi's outside the door. And so for me, like if I were you and you're in the software engineering space, I would add software engineering. So here's why it's so important. So I'm going to click on software engineering. There are 18,000 people on Polywork with the title badge of software engineering. So you're like, Taylor, I mean, well, what am I going to do with 18,000 people? This is what I would do. I would go to Cassidy, right? Love Cassidy. Cassidy's great. I haven't met her. I want to meet her one day. If anybody has a connection with Cassidy, please let me know, because I would love to interview her on my morning show. So here's what I would do, right? So I would contact Cassidy. So here's why it's so important, right? One, badges, top of the funnel. So we're going to talk about kind of marketing terms again. Badges, top of the funnel. How to find people high level, right? So we're going to go to Cassidy's profile, right? Cassidy. Here's kind of the level down. And here's how I would really, really leverage Polywork if you're on the job search. In my opinion, don't quote me on this, or quote me. I would almost leverage Polywork more than Twitter if you're on the job search, because Polywork isn't as much as a full-time job as Twitter. So here's what I would do, right? So you can follow people and see their updates, or you can contact. Here is why Polywork is so crazy, crazy cool. And Kevin, if you want to throw this up in the chat, if you want to get on Polywork, GC2-0. Again, GC2-0. That stands for Guidance Counselor 2.0. You can get access immediately. Thanks, Kevin. And so, again, the founder CEO created this code for my community. We've had over 115 people sign up already. So shout out to y'all. Shout out to my community. But go sign up, GC2.2/0, and you get immediate access. So here's why it's so important, right? So first off, Cassidy has this little a little thing, right? I'm super interested in dev tools companies and making content for any events. Here's my speaker writer, kind of cool. For advisory investing works, I'd love to hear about what your company does and what you're looking for and what you'd expect from me. So first off, here is why it's so important. Here's why Polywork's so important. Literally, Polywork just teed up what your DM should be, right? LinkedIn doesn't do this. LinkedIn does not do this. I get goosebumps every time I talk about Polywork because of the fact Polywork tees up what your DM should be, right? So here, contact, right? And here's why it's so cool, right? You can literally let Cassidy know what you're wanting to message her about, right? So for me, like I would want her to come on my live stream, right? So I would go, hey, Cassidy, been a fan of you from afar. Love what you do content-wise. Would love to have you on my morning show to talk about the importance of content and dev tooling. Hope to hear from you. All right. So I'm going to message her. So I'm literally going to message her on the show. Or on this session right now. So again, what did I do? I used admiration and flattery. Hey, I've admired you from afar. Love what you do content. Love what you do content wise, right? Hey, what am I doing? I'm showing Cassidy that I have looked at her stuff, right? Hey, I've seen your stuff in the wild, right? I love it. I would love to have you on my morning show to talk about the importance of content and dev tooling. Hope to hear from you. Here's what I did. I literally tied in what she wants up here. She's interested in dev tooling, right? Boom, contact. There we go. That's how you do it. And I would consistently do it. Now, a few things around some more cool features they have on here. So you have the space station. So this is the coolest shit. I don't know if I'm allowed to cuss on this. This is the coolest shit I've ever seen. And Polywork needs to be talking about this more than they already are, than they do right now. Look at this. These are all the people investing in startups, open to investing in startups. Here are all the people that are open to content creation. Here are all the people that are open to advisor roles. Here are all the people available for beta testing products, right? Look at this. There's literally countless. They literally make networking dumb. And when I say they make networking dumb, they make it so easy for you because they already group things together. Again, I get goosebumps every time I talk about Polywork because of what they're doing. The reason why I think Polywork has some time to get better is because when it comes to posting's a little busy, right? So here's kind of their homepage. Here are what people are posting, and it's just a little busy. It's just a little busy. I don't love it. And here's another reason why I don't love it is because people aren't living on Polywork yet, like they live on LinkedIn or they live on Twitter, right? Here's the deal. Cassidy may not get back to me for like a week or two, if she even gets back to me, right? And so that's my only downfall is Polywork has not made, they've not made the mobile app. I have access to the mobile app. Shout out Peter. But there's not a mobile app yet. And there's not like streaming capabilities like Kevin and I were talking about off air, right? It's still a little static for me, but I would use Polywork for the DM game because it is so incredibly important. And listen, so I'm gonna wrap it up here. I'm gonna stop sharing for a second. I'm gonna say this. Listen, I'm gonna leave you on the story, and then Kevin, Drew, if we want to kind of just chit chat about my strategy and what we talked about, would definitely love to do that the last few minutes, but. I'm going to tell this story on why the DM game is so important and why networking virtually is so important. So my dad in the restaurant industry, not in tech, barely knows how to use his phone, just very computer illiterate, right? 55, 60 years old. My dad called me up a few years back. He goes, "Hey, Taylor, I just had a bug land on my screen. Hold on." And I accidentally just killed it. My dad called me up one day. He goes, "Hey, Taylor, how do I find a job?" And I go, I don't understand. Like, what do you mean? He goes, "Well, I just quit my job." I said, "Okay." I go, "Can I get back to you on that?" Because I had to I had to dumb down being a recruiter to my dad, not because he couldn't handle it, but because being a recruiter takes a lot of time. You need to have the time. So I tried to give him very attainable goals. I said, "Hey, Dad, this is pre-COVID." I said, "You need to have a lunch, a coffee, a phone call a day with one person in your network or a new person that you want to build a relationship with." I said, "1 a day. That's it. That's all you got to do." He says, "1." I said, "1, but it takes a lot of DMs to kind of get there. So, your morning should be sent DMing and then your afternoon should maybe be a coffee." So my dad did that. He stayed consistent with it. 3 months later, he found his dream job. And he found it because he messaged somebody on LinkedIn in the restaurant industry. He got a job in the restaurant industry because he DM'd somebody that was already in his network on LinkedIn. And so again, get comfortable. I'm going to wrap it up here. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable with DMing strangers, right? Hey, listen, Cassidy may never get back to me, and that's okay. I don't care. She gets back to me, great. If she doesn't, not a big deal. But if she does get back to me, That's a new relationship that I've built because of a random DM. That's what your focus needs to be as you move into the job search now or in the future. So that's all I got. I appreciate y'all hanging out with me. Kevin, Drew, I don't know if you want to hop back on and kind of chit chat for the last few minutes on some things. But again, I appreciate y'all tuning in.
All right. That was pretty good.
Kevin,
I want to help you get Cassidy on your show.
Do you know Cassidy of her? Do you know?
No. Nope. But I'm going to help you on your quest. Like I'm going to live tweet, "Hey Cassidy, you need to go talk to my boy Taylor."
Yeah, I love the interview. I mean, honestly, she's freaking hilarious. I think our personalities are very similar. And then we're also really passionate about content too, which is I think.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, and Cassie's just a great example. She's doing all kinds of cool stuff. She's very open and public with all that.
Yeah.
And I remember you and I were having a conversation when I was on your show not too long ago. It was just being very public about things. So even if you work for a company that you can't talk about what's going on,
talk about your project, you got to NDA. That's okay. You can talk about like a tech you learned. I learned React hooks.
Yep.
I think that's a thing.
Always have your own public persona. There are too many folks out there who hide behind their company. Yeah. And they're like, "Oh, I can't do this because of my company." I'm like, "Yeah, that company's going to let you go one day." And
so
then what?
That's an interesting take. And I had someone tweet at me. Actually, she was a speaker at KCDC. I forgot her name. She's in Nashville. Kara tweeted. Kara Lutton. She tweeted.
Yeah. Yep.
She goes, "What happens if you're under NDA and you can't talk about your projects?" And one of the guys, again, these are all people I've met online, Monarch, who he runs a coding school up in Toronto. He was like, "I'd really get close with your lawyer and figure out what you can and cannot talk about." Because I will tell you this, as a recruiter, it's hard to interview you and figure out what's the best fit if you can't talk about anything you've done. So I'd really make sure you know what you can talk about and what.
No one's asking you to go into specifics. We built an algorithm. Let me explain the 30 points.
Let me explain the algorithm of the metaverse to you. Yeah, no one.
But if you say, "Well, I architected an in-tier solution that uses Azure App Services,
that's fine.
SQL Server, Redis, mobile," that's not NDA.
That's not NDA. That literally is so vague. So vague.
Yeah.
And there's a few people, cloud and development. I want to give you a shout out there. This is very interesting. It can be applied in everything, not only applying for a job. Yeah. I mean, here's the deal, right? What I'm talking about is, I think the way the internet, in my opinion, the internet's moving to, I just think the people who can get comfortable making friends, and listen, I'm an introvert, right? I'm dog tired. This 57 minutes took a lot out of me, believe it or not. I'm an introvert, and I'm going to go crash after this and not talk. And I'm going to eat dinner with my wife and just look at her and be tired. But the thing is that the more comfortable you can get doing this, the more friends you're going to make. And also, too, it's better for introverts to get conversations online, right? If I didn't know Kevin, "Hey, Kevin, can you talk tomorrow at 9?" Right? That you don't have things spurned on you last second. So as an introvert, you can moderate and pace out your day, which is huge.
Yep. All right, folks. Questions for Taylor. We'll just sit here and BS for an hour if we need to. But
very. Oh, so check out TaylorDesseyn.com. I do have questions to ask recruiters. It's kind of my central place to have all my thoughts. So Taylor Desseyn, Desseyn.
I'll drop a link.
TaylorDesseyn.com. I have a bunch of free resources for job seekers, some things to ask hiring managers, all that jazz. So feel free to check that out.
We got a banner. I did it. There we go.
Yeah. You even got my last name right. Very proud of you, Kevin.
Hey, it wasn't me. It was Google.
I love it.
Good times. Yeah. And if you're all on LinkedIn and you're not following Taylor does when he comes back from vacation, you do a daily show.
I do.
Half an hour, right?
Half an hour, 9:30 a.m. Central. Basically, my goal is, so I originally were just going live because of COVID, because I was having the same conversations with every engineer across the country. So I was like, why don't I just start having the same conversations with everybody online?
Yep.
And then that kind of morphed into, well, I'm going to start getting guests, because partly I'm running out of things to talk about, but also too, like, and I think it would just be cool to hear other people's stories. Then it's kind of morphed into like getting engineering managers, because there's no platform where you can like really have access to like premier. Like I've had engineering managers from like DocuSign, AWS, Google, Netflix. I mean, there's not a place where you can get a hiring manager and ask them questions live. And so that's kind of my thing now. But I have job seekers too. We talk about content and the job search. So it's kind of this place where just to develop community and be able to break down all these walls that no one wants to talk about.
Absolutely. So while you were talking earlier, I got a message on another channel from a friend of mine in Richmond who is a recruiter. And I would categorize him like I would you. He one of the good ones.
Good.
And he reached out and he said, I'm watching Taylor right now. He's talking good stuff. I like him.
Cool.
So you got a thumbs up from another recruiter from a different company.
I love it. That means a lot. There's just a few questions.
Yeah, we got a couple here.
Yeah. So with more people working remotely, how has that changed the way you are recruiting and using tools like LinkedIn? Is staffing becoming less location? Yeah. So this is an interesting question and great question. The staffing industry has been flipped on its head because of COVID. I mean, like everything else, right? The price of lumber to, chips, microchips in cars and things, right? So, so it's what I would do if I were you. If I was a job seeker, I'd find 2 or 3 recruiters in your city, right? So Kevin, like go find 2 or 3 recruiters in your city who you like, who appreciate, so you can at least have local market intel, right? It's incredibly important to still know what's going on in your local market. But I would also find 5 or so recruiters nationally who you really like. Maybe I'm one of them you can just kind of pick their brains. Salaries are big right now, right? So ask me where you're at right now. So I can tell you kind of loosely if you're underpriced or overpriced. And so that's incredibly important. And so, I mean, I would say recruiters have always been big on LinkedIn. So that's never going to change. I would say the recruiters who can really separate themselves with content is kind of the next generation of staffing that no one's doing right now. And that's really changed my entire career trajectory over the last 2 years.
There you go.
Does it get
Cloud
easier?
development?
Yeah. So is it cloud development? Yeah. Does it get easier? So you say that you are introvert, since I'm an introvert too. Does it get easier? Does it get easier for what? It gets easier to cold DM people the more you do it, but you got to make sure you have those 3 parts to a DM.
Yeah.
But it does get easier.
I would say to add on to that, don't take it personally.
No.
People are either going to respond to you or they're not. And I hate not responding to people. If someone takes the time to reach out to me about anything I've done publicly, I try really hard to respond. My dumb little story is I had a person email me back in April, ask me about a talk I did 3 years ago.
No way.
And
I barely remember what my wife told me yesterday.
Oh my gosh. They said, I saw you do this talk at Code Match back in 2018. And I'm like, yep, I was there. Pretty sure I did that talk. But they asked for slides and stuff. And I haven't done this talk in such a long time. So I'm like, all right, I will come back. I will find those slides. I will send a copy of the slides to this person. Forgot about that email until last month. And responded to it and had to respond. First, you need to just ignore the fact that I waited almost 6 months to respond to this email. But here's what you asked for. Happy to chat more about it if you want. But there's been a number of cold outreach I've done that have never turned into anything. And it's just because people are busy. They see it. They don't want to respond to it. Like Cassidy. Cassidy might see it, but her instinct isn't going to be, oh, look, it's another guy reaching out to me because it was so well formed. She's probably going to either respond to it immediately or she'll forget about it.
Exactly.
And she'll come back to it in 3 or 4 or 5 months, years,
Yeah,
whatever.
exactly.
So what you need to start doing, Taylor, is being persistent. And
Yeah.
next week you just follow up with her again.
So yeah, I ain't got time for that, but yeah. So is there such a thing as too much posting? If the content's there and you're communicating effectively, no. The issue is that most people don't know how to post enough and make it original and fun. So then it just becomes annoying.
There you go. Taylor, I'm going to give you a tip.
What's up?
All right. All right. This is how you get Cassidy on your show. Create a Twitter list. You were talking about Twitter lists.
Mhm.
The power of Twitter list is when someone's added to a Twitter list, they get a notification that they're added to a Twitter list. So create a Twitter list that says people I would like to have on my show. I would love to have on my show.
Ooh, that's a great idea, actually.
And you keep that a very small list because eventually you'll have people on your show.
Sure.
But add Cassidy to the list, and if she's using any of the native Twitter stuff, she'll get that notification. She's been added to the list, because it doesn't matter if you're following her or not. She'll still get that notification.
That's a fantastic, Kevin. You're so smart.
So I'll tell you where I found out about that tip. Someone added me to a list, people I would like to meet at a conference.
Oh, that's cool.
So I made it a point of going to meet that person. So, and once I found them, I'm like, hey, I saw I was on the list. Let's chat.
It's because of your profile picture. It's because your headshot.
Yeah, exactly. KCDC 2018. That's when I took that picture.
I love it.
Yeah.
Haven't
So,
aged a bit.
don't give up a headshot opportunity when one arises.
Yeah, I'm telling you, headshot's where it's at for sure. All right, boys. I gotta go.
All right.
Boxes.
All right. Well, friends out there in the live stream universe, thank you so much for hanging out with us. Taylor, thank you for hanging out with us with your busy schedule this week. Drew, thank you for hanging out. I'm not sure what our topic is next month, but we'll figure it out and we'll send everyone an invite. So go make sure you're hooked up with Taylor on his LinkedIn so you can check out his show when he comes back from vacation. But Taylor, thanks again for hanging out with us, bud.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, y'all. Y'all have a good one.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
See y'all.